Hello Internet! In today's video I'm going to be doing a book opinion. This time I'm going to be talking about Obelisk Gate by M.K. Jemisin. This is the second book in the 5th season trilogy. So I can't say a lot about what happens in this book because that's not the type of book this is. Much like 5th season, this story really relies on the characters and what's happening with the characters. When you really think about the plot, it's not easy to explain because there are all these things happening to these characters, and the story is more of how these characters are reacting to both the past and the present and everything going on around them. So that the best plot I can give you is in the course of this book, we are finally seeing what a season looks like. So we know the Earth hates everybody and it tries to instill seasons every periodically. They can last anywhere from a couple weeks to a couple years, and during these special seasons, people are going to die because everything goes haywire. Herbivores turn into carnivores, plants, animals start becoming poisonous, things start going weird, and it's going to be a real hard thing to survive. So we're continuing on with the story of Essun, and we figured out the whole plot of the first book and how that story was being told. So to counteract that, we're also getting other points of view other than Essun, and this goes to Nasun, Essun's daughter, who was the one kidnapped in the first book. So we get these two different perspectives. We also get the narrator's perspective, the person who's apparently recording the story, who is talking about this sort of stuff. So we still get multiple perspectives. We still get those multiple perspectives, the ones who aren't Essun in third person, but there is Essun's, which is in second person, where it is saying you are the one feeling Essun's things. So you're the one going through what Essun is going through. I think when it comes to writing, when it comes to point of views, now going over it and looking back at it, the 5th season is definitely more poetic when it comes to having this mixture of second person and third person to tell the story of characters. It definitely works a lot better, and despite me being confused for the first half of 5th season, I definitely think in terms of like point of view and writing, it became a more poetic story in the first book, but in the second book it is definitely a lot more clear and straightforward, which is also a plus. So the first book is more poetic with its storytelling style, but the second book, while still being creative, is more straightforward and easy to follow along. So in the course of this book, we get to see Essun and Nasun and their opposing points of view, and we get to see how they think of each other, and it's definitely really interesting to see the parent-child relationship through Nasun's eyes, because you really get to see, like, you don't know your parents, right? You think you know your parents, but you don't. So when we're seeing Nasun judge Essun for like the things that she's done, we're seeing the daughter judge the mother, you're kind of sitting and you're just like, man, if only you knew. Like, if only you knew what was happening, what had gone on, you wouldn't be thinking this way. And slowly, as she begins to discover, her opinions about her mother change, but still you're just like, man, it's so hard to watch this relationship between parent and child that is happening from a distance, because you know the inside of the parent that the child is judging. Like, you know the intentions, what's going on. So I really, really like that, because that's like such an interesting thing. Like, when you remember, like, your parents are people and they have done things and they have lived lives, and then sometimes there are reasons why they do what they do, because like they said, they are human. So it was really interesting to see this parent-child relationship from both the parent and the child, how the child thought of the parent and how those feelings changed as she slowly came to understand certain aspects of her mother more. When it came to Essun, it was really interesting to find out more about the seasons, about like how the history came to be, of how the origin became oppressed, and all of these sort of things. So we definitely get to learn still more history and more reasonings behind why there are seasons and why the origin get the brunt of like ridicule and stuff. So we still have like a lot of like I don't know how to describe this series. It's just a lot of character arcs, a lot of points in which we learn more about this character and how they are dealing with information. The information of the past, of learning of the past, and then what has happened to them in the past and how they are dealing with that now in the present and how they plan to deal with that in the future. That is all I have to say on this book. There is not much more I can say. If you like stories that are very compelling when it comes to characters, if you like stories in which characters have to think a lot and how you get to see how they react to different situations, you're definitely going to like this series. Of course, I'm talking about the second book, so I'm assuming you've read the first book. If you are watching this video, the second book is a really good follow-up. It is a lot different because the poetic feel is gone. Like, half of the fun experience of the 5th season was figuring out how the points of view related to each other and what was happening at what time and trying to figure out that sort of thing. In the second book, that is lost, but instead we gain a very complex relationship between parent and child and seeing how different perspectives, like how different people perceive each other, which is very, very interesting when like you think about it. So instead of trying to figure out how points of view relate to each other like on a timeline, now you're seeing how points of view relate to each other because you're seeing how characters relate to each other, which is like a pretty decent trade-off when you think about it, because Nassoon and her character arc really adds a lot more. I think the only sort of low point for me in this book was the narrator portions, when the narrator is saying, I wonder if you know who I am telling you this story or telling the story of you, and this and that. And it wasn't so much it was bad, it was just like, oh, I don't know why this is here, but okay, I'm gonna go along with it. It's just like, it was one of those things where I'm like, I'm sure this will come back up and I'll see the point to this eventually, but like, I'm not really seeing the purpose of it right now. So other than that, and other than me having a few theories about why that is there and whether this is the purpose of that and like who it is who's narrating the story, I'm like pretty average on that whole piece. Otherwise, it is a very good book. I definitely like learning more about the Origin, how they related to the Stone people, the whole past of why Earth hates everyone, what happens during a season, because we just heard that seasons are bad or the season is coming, but we didn't really get to experience it and see it, so I did like those things. So M.K. Jemisin is a really good and talented writer. The 5th season and The Obelisk Gate are different slightly, but still very, very good. The Obelisk Gate is a good follow-up to that first book. So if you like that first book, you'll like this second book, and hopefully I'll get time to read the third book. I'm really nervous because I read this book on audio and that was fantastic, but there is no audio for the third book that is available to me. So I don't know how long it's going to take before I tell you about that. But hopefully soon, because I'm really interested in what's gonna go on, because that into this, I was just like, ooh, that sounds super cool. Let me see more of that. So, if you like what you're seeing here and you want to continue to see more, click on those buttons down below, and goodbye, internet.